I am Superman of Doom. The people of the motherland have come, and it's good that I am Superman of Doom. Chapter 52. Whining. The fierce and imposing sound of the horn sounded on the first floor, reaching the city area shrouded in white fog outside, and the sound of the trumpet continued to fade away. What am I doing? Aiko smiled wryly and weakly lowered the horn. But the next moment, as the roar of the car engine sounded, 3 armed vehicles stopped sharply in the fog at the door, and more than a dozen armed men quickly got out of the car. The one-eyed man at the head waved his hand and shouted, "Stay on guard, save people and evacuate. Is anyone really coming?" Aiko was confused and passed out. When she woke up again, she found herself lying in the back of an armed vehicle, covered with a quilt, following the car in front of her through the fog. "You are." Aiko looked wary. The one-eyed man in the passenger seat of the vehicle turned around and said in a deep voice, "We are senior agents sent by the Kunlun headquarters yesterday to hand over the sheltery SAS 1666 of your branch." Quote, "So it's you." Yingzi suddenly thought of the silver-haired boy in her mind, and said softly, "Unfortunately, that asylum escaped." Quote, "That's not important anymore." The one-eyed man shook his head. His tense face looked at the fog outside the car. "If it wasn't for a trip, we wouldn't be able to investigate in time the invasion situation that occurred inside the city here." Quote, "Now, are we going to save people?" Aiko asked. "No. We are evacuating out of the foggy urban area." The one-eyed man, who was the captain of the senior detective team, shook his head decisively. Yingzi's eyes widened and she hurriedly said, "However, the commanders of our branch." The one-eyed man calmly responded, "Your commander has long died. Although communication failed, our senior agents could learn that his life ended an hour ago through other special methods." Quote, "Sir." Yingzi's eyes darkened, and then said vigorously, "But there must be other survivors in the city." "Newcomer." The one-eyed man interrupted her and said in a deep voice, "Don't you understand yet? What is happening in your city right now is an invasion that can be classified as S or even higher." Quote, "The city is no longer saved. What we can do now is to evacuate and give up as soon as possible, report this matter to the Federation, and then send it a ride completely, so as not to affect other surrounding cities." Quote, Yingzi's heart was shocked. She didn't expect that the invasion that occurred in Tianhe City would be so serious that she needed to completely abandon the entire city. This is a city with a permanent population of 6 million and famous for its technological development. Yingzi's face stiffened, and she subconsciously asked, "Send it a ride thoroughly, this means?" The one-eyed man said coldly and unquestionably, "We need to apply for nuclear weapon support, and only then can we deal with the most horrific and extensive invasion in history. South of the city, suburban belt." With the help of others in the car, Pan Hu climbed into a moving truck with nearly 30 survivors in the compartment. Looking back at the military base that was constantly moving away, Pan Hu was in a trance, unable to forget the existence of bone spurs he had just seen. So powerful and furious, fierce and perfect, like a god that cannot be seen directly. "Fortunately, he is not interested in a weak human being like me." Pan Hu muttered. He was completely sure that it was the powerful humanoid bone spur that existed, knocking the previous sheep-like giant to the ground. Just thinking about it, the city earth trembled violently, and the fog in the rear base city area stirred and churned, and one after another the tragic screams that made people drop their senses penetrated their ears. In addition, there are powerful storms spreading here. This is undoubtedly a battle between monsters and monsters, gods and gods. But for some reason, Pan Hu fought from the bottom of his heart, hoping that the humanoid bone spur existence could win. Boom. The sound barrier broke, and humanoid bone spurs appeared in the air that jumped thousands of meters above, and with the storm, reached out and hugged a giant horn that broke through the clouds forward. The perfect bone spur body that was only 2 meters tall burst out with unimaginable power, and the powerful and terrifying golden red lightning burst out above the exoskeleton, and with one hand, the sheep-like giant that was constantly struggling to get up in the fog was completely pressed to the ground. In the face of the huge and boundless sheep-like giant, the mournful hooves that stimulate the spirit. The humanoid bone spur also violently opened its mouth, accompanied by a deafening roar, and the body was abundant to the overflow of destructive energy, released from the eye socket and mouth of the white bone mask. The next moment, laugh at. 3 red destructive energy rays cut through the fog, like a heavenly sword, instantly extending out for thousands of meters, diagonally cutting down towards the huge body of the sheep-like giant. Even on top of a truck that has already driven out for kilometers. Pan Hu and the other survivors could still see 3 scorching rays of red lightning across the city. Then, a huge ball with a huge mountain crashed through the base building, rolling out for several kilometers, just in time to stop in the fog not far from the truck. The survivors in the car lost their voices en masse, their faces blazed. It was a giant sheep's head, a strange head similar to a black sheep, and the head alone could be compared to a mountain. You can imagine how huge the body is and can withstand the bombardment of modern missiles. But such a misty giant existed, and it was killed by the whole suppression. The head was cut off, and the neck break was flat and scorched black, and there was a disgusting scorched smell. This will be a scene that the survivors will never forget, which is a miracle. In the midst of a city shrouded in fog. The huge sheep-like body that lost its head fell down, and there was another loud bang. The humanoid bone spur monster roared, and the red flames in its eyes surged with flames, as if to obtain a certain amount of satisfying pleasure. But the aura of destruction on its body was not weakened. Half-human, half-doomed Yimon turns, breaks through the sound barrier, and leaps into the other misty monsters with a hurricane. In the fog, kill a batch of monsters, and a new batch of monsters will be teleported from the other dimension, which is why the invasion event cannot be handled and controlled. But the foggy area that everyone fears to evacuate is Yiming's paradise and Paradise Lost, and he can constantly vent his desire to destroy, so as to make himself completely out of control. The misty monster hunts humans, and the monster is not even a prey for the current Yimeng, just a toy to vent destruction. Monsters are endless, destruction is endless. Yimeng was immersed in it, surrounded by nourishing and destructive energy. I don't know how many misty monsters in the city were killed. And the cities evacuated by humans were constantly destroyed by varying degrees of ravage. Only the black goat-like monster can satisfy him a little, and the other mist monsters will be vaporized by the lightning of destruction just by approaching. From noon to noon, it seems tireless. Until half-human, half-destruction day Yimeng found that the refresh speed of the misty monsters from the alien invasion in the city was far from the speed of being killed by the destructive power he unleashed. Still, we must use dream invasion to control the power from the root. Humanoid bone spurs exist on the tallest building in the center of the city, not resembling a hoarse whisper of a human voice. But at this time, shout! The chubby and bloated cylindrical warhead dragged the tail flame and flew in from outside the foggy city, aiming 100 meters above the center of the city. I know. Come on. Half-human, half-destruction day Yimeng Bai Bones had no expression, no fear, but under the desire for destruction, he took the initiative to jump closer to the cylindrical metal warhead. The next moment, boom! First, the extremely dazzling hot daylight mass lit up. Even under the thick fog, it was still clearly visible to the outside world. And then the indescribable shock wave and electromagnetic pulse exploded, sweeping the city from the center out. Countless modern buildings and streets were destroyed, and a huge and boundless mushroom cloud burst through the city fog. Then, endless radiation and radioactivity continued to devour farther regions and creatures. After the Federal College entrance examination, the first day. Today, TRW City, Nuclear Flat. 0059 after nuclear leveling. Star Dragon Year 0200, the first day after the college entrance examination. Today, in Tianhe City, fog, the surface temperature is 30 million degrees Celsius. 500 kilometers away from the center of TRW, Fuyuki City. At this time, almost all the citizens of the city walked out of the house, staring blankly in the direction of Tianhe City. They could still feel the earth trembling, a huge mushroom cloud rising flat. And the terrifying changes of heaven and earth were like the end of the world. Miss Chen Hong, who was here, was worried about looking at the black-haired girl on the side, worried that Miss Tifa would not be able to accept it, after all, in her opinion, even if it was a monster. If it was still in Tianhe City before the nuclear bomb, it would definitely lose the possibility of survival. After all, this is a nuclear bomb, the ultimate weapon of the current era, or a nuclear bomb of tens of millions of tons. This tonnage nuclear bomb is enough to destroy most of the infrastructure of Tianhe City, and make it uninhabitable within 100 miles, becoming a forbidden area for human beings. However, under the reflection of Chen Hong's eyes, the black-haired girl stood tall on the street. The strong wind blew up the silky black hair. And the hands she held hard rested in front of her towering chest. In the palm of your hand, there is a mechanical USB flash drive. He'll be back. He will definitely come back. Chapter 1 Pre